be out there at the end.
I am a trooper.
All right, Lucha Underground, everybody, in Espanol.
First episode of Lucha Underground. It opened with, and in hindsight, this made no sense. There was like a movie fight scene.
Well, it probably would make sense if we understood Spanish, dude.
Oh, I don't know. I'm not sure how they could tie this in with whatever else was going on in the show. There was a movie fight scene where one of the combatants had a lucha mask and was doing like arm drags and head scissors and stuff, and he beat up all the bad guys. Then they showed luchadors coming out of a cave and walking across a field. And they showed the evil promoter with money.
Yeah, you can't figure this out by just what you just described?
No.
There's a guy with money that is the promoter of Lucha Underground.
Right.
And fighters are coming from all over the world.
Caves?
Rings and caves.
There's a cave in Mexico that stores luchadors?
Sure. I don't fucking know, but that's what the story is.
Who was fighting the opening scene? We never saw any of them again.
I'm sure they'll be on the show later.
He fought, he helps rescue another man in a mask, and they sat down in a stairwell to talk, and they showed up repeatedly.
All you need to know is these were, if you've never seen this show, it is a very high production values. Mm-hmm. It is like an HBO series featuring Lucha Libre. And when I watched it, all I could conclude was, this is what TNA has been striving to do.
That's a good comparison,
but they've never been able to do it. And here Robert Rodriguez walks in with all of his slow motion, and he's done it. Because he's got a giant budget, apparently.
It reminded me also, in style but not quality, of all things, the Urban Wrestling Federation.
Kind of did, yeah.
Because there were wrestling matches that were really window dressing for the backstage segments, but unlike Urban Wrestling Federation and unlike TNA, the backstage segments were great.
No, we couldn't even understand what anybody was saying.
No, we'll get to that. So, we had a female ring announcer who, in English, welcomed us to Lucha Underground. Then Hugo Savinovich and Vampiro ran down the show in Spanish.
These guys. We got to do 20 minutes on these two. Hugo Savinovich was every Lucha announcer you've ever heard.
Yeah.
He's talking at 1,000,000 miles an hour. He ain't breathing.
No.
He's just screaming repeatedly for 60 minutes. And Vampiro is next to him. And every now and then they would cut to the announcers. And every time they cut to the announcers, Hugo Savinovich is there looking like Jabba the Hutt, just shouting and screaming. And Vampiro always looks like he has something he wants to say, but it's impossible to get a word in edgewise.
Yes.
There was also a great moment. I don't know why they put it on television. Why don't you explain what they showed?
I'll try my best. They cut to the announcers. And as you noted, Hugo Savinovich was speaking 1 billion words a minute. Is very excited and speaking very quickly. And as he's leaning forward and intensely ranting, Vampiro is slacking back in his chair, looking off camera. And he makes eye contact with somebody, and they exchange some kind of gestures. Vampiro points to his eyes or then points forward or something. And suddenly Vampiro is leaning forward and watching the match with great intensity.
It was as if the man said, "You're about to be on screen." And so Vampiro adjusted himself, but it had been a rib.
Yes.
They told him after he had been on screen.
Now keep in mind, this was not live. And in fact, nothing about this show really came off like a live program. I guess the main event did. But there was editing throughout. So it was very clear the show was a taped program. And they went... Not only did they not edit it out, they went through the trouble to make sure it was still in.
Oh, yeah.
That's what I'm trying to get at.
Hugo was, he kind of drove me a little bit crazy, but based on reviews I've got of Matt Stryker doing English commentary, I think we got the better end of the bargain here.
I am convinced, with the exception of Jim Ross in his prime, wrestling announcers are better if you can't understand them. I love the New Japan guys. I can't understand a goddamn word they say. I've seen 1,000,000 lucha shows with guys I don't understand a word of, and they're great. But when I hear WWE announcers or TNA announcers or most anything else, I get bored and pissed at them.
You want to know why?
Because they're stupid.
Because the Spanish announcers and the Japanese announcers, I guarantee, are calling the action.
Yeah.
And they're very excited about it.
Yeah.
And they're explaining what's going on. I watch Raw and everybody's yelling at each other or making jokes at their own expense.
Or bored.
Or they're
sounding
bored,
Yeah,
exactly.
you will never hear the New Japan guy sounding bored, and you sure as hell will never hear Hugo Savinovich sounding bored.
I don't think Hugo Savinovich has ever been bored in his life.
No. So, okay. So to recap the intro here, we got the ring announcer speaking in English, then the announcer speaking in Spanish, then the ring announcer bringing out the promoter in Spanish, then the promoter speaking in English, and then Spanish.
Sure.
Pick a language and stick with it. That's all I'm asking. He had a briefcase full of money. He cut a promo that you and I did not understand, but your wife translated it as, "Tonight, wrestlers could get rich or die poor."
Great promo.
Those are the only options?
Dude, I like this guy. This Daniel Cueto, I hate, or Dario Cueto.
Dario Cueto, I believe.
Yeah, I'm sick of the heel owner gimmick, but this guy was good.
Yeah.
And you know who else was good? We're jumping ahead here. Conan is great. Now, I think that Conan has done a bunch of telenovelas, which are the Mexican soap operas. I'm pretty sure he has, so he has experience. But man, and you know that and I know this because I've been on his show, and all he wants to do is talk about shows I don't watch on TV, and then he yells at Dave and I for not watching like Game of Thrones or whatever. But you know this guy watches all of the shows, all of the hot shows on television. He keeps up with stuff. He studies them. And man, he is good. He's such a compelling. You cannot not watch him when he's on screen. I couldn't tell if he said boom. I wouldn't be surprised. But he was great on this show.
So the opening match was Blue Demon Jr. versus Chavo Guerrero Jr. This was very heavily edited with 1,000,000 camera switches.
Fuck, it should have been edited off the show.
He still cannot make it look good. Apparently, I believe Dave said it was edited from 15 down to less than 5. I can only imagine how bad those other 10 minutes were. The audio quality was atrocious, and I don't normally notice this kind of thing. But this, I believe, was two men shouting inside a metal tool shed and being recorded on a tape deck.
No.
The good news is the fans were awesome. These fans were in everything on this show. They ruled. They did a very slow, very scary top rope powerbomb, and then Blue Demon won with something kind of like a Scorpion Deathlock. So far, no good, I wrote.
I can figure out how they had all of this money, and they couldn't get a referee without a broken arm. Referee raises the arm of Blue Demon afterwards. He's got a giant cast on his arm. What is that all about? And they also had way too many camera cuts. Made this match even worse, which is hard to believe, given how bad it was.
We had our first great backstage segment. I don't know what the fuck was going on, but the evil promoter guy was on one side of the desk, and Conan was on the other side of the desk, and they had a conversation. There was cursing involved, and I believe there was something about money. Whitney said they were talking something about money and work. I don't know what the fuck was going on here, but the evil promoter guy is an actual actor.
Oh, yeah.
And this was shot nothing at all like a wrestling skit. There was no attempt to make this, I don't even know how to put it. There was no attempt to pretend that this was shot at the arena, or that these guys did not know, or that these guys were actual, wrestlers who were mysteriously unaware of the cameras there. There were cameras all over the place. They cut back and forth. There was scary music playing. And all this stuff should sound like we would hate it. But here's the thing. It was really, really good. And this is where I learned, and this is your TNA comparison is great. TNA has been for 10 years now trying to do backstage segments where like the camera's hidden so it makes sense. And these guys, I guess they went the other direction, but I'm struggling.
Let me explain it to you, because I can explain exactly.
Save me.
All right, here's the deal. And if anybody in TNA is listening, I hope this makes sense. This is a television show. This is a telenovela about professional wrestling. TNA, the problem with TNA when they try this stuff is that TNA tries to be half wrestling show and half telenovela. That is a recipe for utter failure. That's why it doesn't work. Because half the time you're watching what is pushed as a sporting event on television, And then all of a sudden they go backstage for something that is so completely different. It's so jarring to go from a professional wrestling show to a telenovela. Whereas this show is a telenovela from start to finish. There is no jump from, even the wrestling matches are shot like you're watching a show on HBO. The whole thing is consistent from start to finish. There is an internal consistency to the entire show.
Yes.
It is one giant soap opera, to use the English term. It is a giant soap opera about wrestling, and it's all shot the exact same way. Whereas TNA, this half and half thing, is never going to work. It's why when you watch a WWE show and all of a sudden you see something backstage with Kane and like creepy music is playing, it never works. It always fails. It's always stupid because it's too jarring. When the show starts, your brain clicks into whatever the show is. If you're watching Game of Thrones, your brain, when the show begins, gets into the mode of what you're watching. If you're watching a movie, it's the same way. If you're watching football, it's the same way. Like, can you imagine, Vinny, watching a football game and they cut backstage to, I don't know, a team meeting or something, and it's shot like an HBO, you know what I mean? It would be goofy.
I can answer that, Brian. They tried something like that. It was called the XFL. It failed.
It failed miserably.
It failed badly.
So you can't go halfway. You either got to go all the way one way or you've got to go all the way the other way. And if you try and go half and half like TNA does, that's why it doesn't work.
We had a Prince Puma profile video. He was in the ring doing all kinds of stuff. As Conan said it, he was the descendant of Aztec warriors. Somewhere in here, he actually mentioned in English Game of Thrones. I think that's what he's going to watch when the show is done. Son of Havoc versus Sexy Star. Son of Havoc was Matt Cross and his beard and a mask. And Sexy Star was a hot girl in a mask. We had a Sexy Star profile video. And it showed her, working out in an empty gym and doing all kinds of cool stuff. And then it closed with her saying in English, "Every woman is sexy. Every woman is a star. And she's going to fight for them and she would never be afraid again." Well, this is kind of creepy and uncomfortable. Then, I'll cut to the end. She came out here to prove that women did not be afraid of being beaten up by men. And she got beat up by a man and lost.
Yeah.
I'm confused.
A lot of people really didn't like this. And one of my buddies at the jiu-jitsu school doesn't watch any wrestling, but he's Hispanic. And he knows, obviously, that I write about wrestling. And so he came up to me and he said, "Oh, dude, I watched that Lucha Underground." And I was like, "Yeah, what'd you think about it?" He goes, "It's kind of cool. But man, that man versus woman match." I was like, wow. This guy ain't even a wrestling fan, and that's the one thing that he mentioned first and foremost was he really didn't like the man versus woman match. And I don't know, it just kind of seemed like a man versus woman match. I guess, I don't know. I didn't think
it's
it was...
not the match itself was that bad. It's that it's just skeevy. Even
I've seen it done a lot worse. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, I guess.
I don't think they need to do it.
No.
It's pointless.
Don't. When I watch my wacky, fun, entertaining show, I don't need to even think about domestic violence. That's all.
Maybe that's the thing. I didn't see this as domestic violence. I just saw it as... It reminded me of like when you see a match in Japan, like an MMA fight that just shouldn't be made.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, you don't see it as an assault, but it's like, who in their right mind put this together?
I wouldn't have thought that except for the profile video.
Well, yeah.
She seemed to be emphasizing that. So, anyway, they do the video, and then Son of Havoc cuts a promo. I don't know if... I haven't heard Matt Cross talk in a long time. Not since Tough Enough, I think. But either he has...
Maybe he went through puberty.
He's either gone through puberty, either he's had voice box surgery, or they dubbed in his voice or edited it electronically, but he has had a lot of bass in his voice. He said he was not going to wrestle the woman. He told Sexy Star to take her count-out loss, and she teased doing so. Then she attacked him from behind, and they did cool lucha stuff for a minute or two, and then he hit a backbreaker and he pinned her. I don't understand this.
Yeah.
Dario Cuerto, the evil promoter, met with Chavo Guerrero in the locker room. This one was the best one. Chavo lost in his big debut here. He's let down his whole family. And he's sitting in front of his locker, sweaty and
Not
depressed.
just his whole family, the legendary Guerrero clan.
Yes.
That's even worse.
Yes. And he's sitting in front of his locker, sweating and depressed. And Dario's speaking, and the camera is shot, so Chavo is in the foreground, just slightly out of focus, and then Dario's in the background, very clear. And again, I couldn't understand a word, but just from the tone of this, the music, and the voice inflections, I got the message that you have let your family down. I'm very disappointed in you. You need to pick up your game or you're going to be in big trouble. Or you need to join me or you'll be in big trouble. Either way, it works. It's quite great. And the main event was Johnny Mundo, also known as John Morrison, versus Prince Puma, also known as Ricochet in a Mask. Here was where they did the bit with Vampiro, where he was zoning out and then suddenly started paying attention to the match. And every time they come back to him, he started doing more weird stuff. So they had if you like back and forth action, this was the match for you. They did 100 spots and they all looked awesome. This match was killer. And I'm watching this, and I didn't know the results, but I imagined it's Lucha Underground. They're marketing to a Hispanic audience. I'm guessing the guy with the Aztec Warrior gimmick is going to beat the white dude. And as I'm watching this, I'm thinking, John Morrison looks really, really, really good here. Like, not just not missing a beat since he left WWE, but probably better than most of his WWE appearances. He looked like the kind of guy you could have be a top star in a major national promotion. And then he hit the Starship Pain and he won.
That's right.
So I guess he is, in fact, going to be the top star in a major national promotion. So, the finish was he worked him over for a bit. He hit the Moonlight Drive, but Puma kicked out of that. And so Johnny cut him off with the standing Spanish Fly and then Starship Pain and won. And afterwards, he congratulated Puma and they celebrated together. True sportsmen. Dario Cueto came out to meet with him. He showed them the briefcase full of money. I believe he said, "You're not going to get this." And Morrison went after him. But then two guys, I don't know who they were, hit the ring and laid out the baby faces. And then out came Ezekiel Jackson.
Ricklin.
Is that his name now?
Well, it was his name in TNA, remember?
Ricklin.
He was there briefly.
Like a show and a half.
Yeah.
So he started clubbering the good guys, and yes, he hit an arm slam. He laid out Johnny Mundo. And then Cuerto said the temple is not just for luchadors. He had been scouting for the best fighters in the world, and these men worked for him. And that was the cap of the show. That was a very, very fun show.
It really was. No disrespect to Prince Puma or anything like that, but there was something about Johnny Mundo. He had a polish about him that they were both great.
Not just a polish, a poise.
Yes.
He carried himself. Forget about
this guy knew how to be a main eventer on
Yes.
a television show.
Yes, he carried himself like he was the man.
Yeah, this was a very good match. I first off, I was shocked that they beat Prince Puma, but hey, Johnny Mundo looked great. I was shocked that they gave this match away already. This was like a match that you build for a long time and make it a big event. But hey,
Kind of.
put it here on the first show.
I do see your point there, but I also think in your very, very first show, if you can make that a home run, that's a big deal.
Well, there is that as well. I do need to start learning Spanish. I think I'll start tomorrow because I couldn't figure out what the hell was going on here. I did take 2 years of Spanish. I think I've told this story before. I took 2 years of Spanish in high school, and like the first year, I did great. Got like straight A's because I'm Mexican. The second year...
Did you get extra credit for that?
The second year, I showed up for Spanish class, and there was a lady there, and she said, your teacher, your Spanish teacher, the person who's supposed to be teaching this class, he's very ill. He's in the hospital. So we're hoping for the best. And it's like, oh, man. So, like, a week goes by, and then, like, in the middle of week 2, she shows up and he was dead.
That's awful.
And she goes, so I'm going to be teaching the class now. And I've never spoken Spanish. This is year 2, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a French teacher. But I'm fluent in French. I know how to learn languages. And so we're going to learn Spanish together. So as you could probably imagine, we didn't learn Spanish together very well there in second-year Spanish at Bothell High School. So I have very limited Spanish. I can understand a little, but not a lot. But from watching the show, and my wife has been, Whitney's taken lessons through Rosetta Stone, and she's carrying on full conversations with my dad already. She just started like a few months ago. So I've been motivated to try to learn Spanish before Lucha Underground goes off the air forever. Mm-hmm. So it's another race against time. Like, who were we talking about earlier? Somebody else had a race against time. Adam Rose, yeah.
I was never a great student in school, but I was always a fast learner. So I'd always ace the tests and get bad grades in the projects because that required actual work. Until I got to Spanish. And my brain was just not wired to learn Spanish. And I was failing that class badly at midterms. And I had to struggle and bust my ass to get a passing grade. And when I finished that quarter with a D, I was more proud of that D than any of the B's or C's or A's I ever got.
Wow.
I worked for that D. I earned that D.
How about that?
Yeah.
Well, there you go.
That's my way of saying don't expect me to learn Spanish anytime soon.
All right, before we go here today, I went to Home Depot yesterday because I was going to I was thinking of getting curtains for that window right there. Thought it might help the acoustics a little bit. And if you'd only seen what I bought and installed there, you'll note it's not there anymore. I took it back. It was horrific. But the point of this is, when I was at Home Depot, they've already got Christmas decorations up. So what the hell?
I will. Okay, if you want to, go ahead.
I was just going to celebrate with a song.
Then they interviewed AJ, who I believe referred to Sting as Stink.
So when we had Kermit as a guest host.